Welcome to today's deep dive. We've got a really fascinating medical diagram in front of us today, mapping out the physiological transformation of the uterus from month 1 all the way to month 9. So, okay, let's unpack this. When you look at architectural blueprints, the foundation stays exactly where it was poured, right?
Right, yeah, the walls don't just suddenly shift halfway through the construction. I mean, it's a rigid structure built to resist change.
Exactly. But looking at this medical diagram of a pregnancy, well, that static blueprint goes completely out the window. We're talking about an organ that literally uproots itself.
It completely redesigns the internal neighborhood. It really is the ultimate dynamic remodel.
Yeah.
What we're actually looking at here is a roadmap of human development.
Yeah, showing us exactly how much the uterus expands and, why tracking its position is so crucial for monitoring both maternal and fetal health.
Definitely. And looking at the diagram, the first thing that really jumps out at me is those hidden beginnings.
Oh, for sure. In months 1 and 2, the uterus is just the size of a grape, or maybe a lemon, and it's tucked completely away inside the bony pelvis.
Like a hidden safe room, almost.
Yeah, exactly, like a hidden, expanding safe room. But, since it's growing so rapidly, is it staying tucked in the pelvis during those first 2 months strictly because of space, or is it a protective mechanism?
Well, what's fascinating here is that the initial pelvic location actually hides the really dramatic changes occurring. The uterus acts as that safe room, but instead of steel walls, it is made of a highly elastic muscle called the myometrium.
Okay, so it's elastic, but the bony pelvis around it is the actual physical vault.
Exactly. It provides a central protection from external physical trauma during those really sensitive early weeks.
Wow, so it's heavily fortified down there.
It is. And it stays in that pelvic casing until it literally just runs out of room.
Which happens pretty quickly, right? Because by month 3, the diagram shows it growing to the size of an orange.
Right. And it simply cannot fit in that space anymore. That physical restriction is what forces it to finally rise out of the pelvic cavity.
Which is the first major physical transition of the pregnancy.
Exactly. Yeah. Because the expanding orange can no longer fit in the pelvis, it pushes upward.
And as it pushes upward, changing how medical professionals track its progress, what actually allows an organ to just travel like that?
Well, the uterine muscle fibers themselves are stretching and thickening. And at the same time, the surrounding ligaments stretch incredibly far to accommodate this upward expansion.
That explains the how. And the diagram highlights that we start focusing on the fundus, which is the top of the uterus, using anatomical landmarks.
Precisely. Once it leaves the pelvis, the fundus becomes the primary physical indicator.
It looks like these anatomical landmarks act just like mile markers on a highway.
That is a great way to put it.
So in months 4 and 5, the fundus travels from the pubic symphysis, that joint at the front of the pelvis, right up to the umbilicus, your belly button.
Yep, moving right up the highway.
But here's where I get a little lost looking at this. Zooming ahead to months 8 and 9, it reaches its absolute maximum size, hitting the xiphoid process right at the base of the sternum.
It is a massive journey.
Up to the sternum, how does it not completely crush the lungs?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it actually does compress the lungs and the diaphragm significantly.
Wait, really? It compresses them that much?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
That upward pressure against the xiphoid process is exactly why so many pregnant individuals experience severe shortness of breath in the 3rd trimester.
Okay, that suddenly makes so much sense. The internal geography is completely rewriting itself.
Yeah, the diaphragm just simply has less room to pull down. So those mile markers aren't just trivia. They allow medical educators and professionals to accurately monitor fetal growth and maternal health.
Just by tracking these positional changes over time.
Exactly. It's a highly effective, low-tech timeline for healthy development.
Tracking the uterus from a grape in the pelvis to literally hitting the xiphoid process at the rib cage. It's incredible.
It really is.
Which leaves you, our listener, with something to really mull over. Looking closely at the final stage of this diagram, you see the bladder and the rectum sitting right next door to the uterus.
Right, those very close neighbors.
Yeah. So considering this massive expansion from the pelvis all the way up to the ribs, how do those surrounding organs adapt and manage to actually function while being constantly squeezed by an organ that has increased its size so dramatically?